Hello and welcome back to Jyoti 10 Story. Let's look at the headlines, what's coming for you today. In Bangladesh textile factories, 85% of workforce are women. They are now fighting for better salary and proper improved working conditions. Taiwan has scrambled fighter jets, activated missile systems in response to China incursions. White House blasts Exxon over historical $56 billion annual profits. Macau's casino revenues surged in January after COVID rules lifted. A mom from Atlanta, Georgia in the US has revealed she gave birth by herself in the passenger seat of a car as she was stuck in traffic on the way to the hospital. The large-scale Chinese deployment comes as Beijing increases preparations for a potential blockade or outright attack on Taiwan that has stirred major concerns among military leaders in the United States. Taiwan's key ally in a memo first month, US Air Force General Mike Minihan instructed officers to be prepared for a US-China conflict over Taiwan in 2025. As head of Air Mobility Command, Minihan has keen understanding of the Chinese military and his personal remarks call in the US for heightened preparations. Taiwan's defense ministry said that 20 Chinese aircraft on Tuesday crossed the central line in the Taiwan Strait that has long been an unofficial buffer zone between the sides, which divided aimed civil war in 1949. China claims Taiwan as its own territory to be taken by force, while the vast majority of Taiwanese are opposed to coming under the control of China's authoritarian Communist Party. Taiwan's armed force monitored the situation to respond to these activities, the defense ministry said Wednesday. China has sent warship, bombers, fighter jets, and support aircraft into airbase near Taiwan on a near daily basis, hoping to wear down the island's limited defense resources and undercut support for pro-independence President Tsai Ing-wen. Chinese fighter jets have also confronted military aircraft from the US and allied nations over international airspace in the South China and East China Seas, in what Beijing has described as dangerous and threatening maneuvers. A steering of visits in recent months by foreign politicians to Taiwan, including by then US House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and numerous politicians from the European Union, sparked displays of military might from both sides. In response of Pelosi's visit in August, China staged war games surrounding the island and fired missiles over it into the Pacific Ocean. China has repeatedly threatened retaliation against countries seeking closer ties with Taiwan, but its attempts at intimidation have sparked a backlash in popular sentiment in Europe, Japan, the US, and other nations. Taiwan is set to hold presidential election next year, in contrast to China's system of total control by President and partially General Secretary Xi Jinping, who has removed term limits of effectively make him leader for life. China's efforts to reach out to Taiwan's pro-unification nationalist party have largely backfired. Although the nationalists performed well in the local election last year, the party's pro-Beijing policies have failed to find resonance among voters on a national level. Taiwan has responded to China's threats but ordering more defensive weaponry from the US, leveraging its democracy and high-tech economy to strengthen foreign relations and revitalizing its democratic arms industry. Compulsory military service for men in Beijing extended from 4 months to 1 year, and public opinion surveys show high levels of support for increasing defense spending to country China's threats. Taiwan de facto ambassador in Washington, Bai Kim-shao, said there is a new emphasis on preparing military reservists and civilians for the kind of all of society fight that Ukrainians are waging against Russia. Everything we are doing now is to prevent the pain and suffering of the tragedy of Ukraine from being repeated in our scenario in Taiwan. So ultimately, we seek to deter the use of military force, but in worst case scenario, we understand that we have to be better prepared. Many large fashion companies are producing their clothes in Bangladesh, where exports from the textile industry have grown from 9 billion to 29 billion in just 10 years. 85% of workers in the country's 4,825 textile factories are women. And although there has been an economic recovery, the seamstresses have not been benefited from it. A minimum wage of just $63 a month, poor job security, and 12-hour working days is the reality for many of 4.5 million female factory workers. But many seamstresses have had enough. The women want fair working conditions, but attaining them is not easy. This exact struggle had been adapted for the big screen and turned into a film that recently premiered in cinemas around the world, including Denmark. In Dhaka, a job of grave importance since many unemployed women in Bangladesh are at the risk of ending up in unwanted marriage and as prostitutes. But working conditions gradually worsening with poor salary, loss of rights, and insecure working facilities. The safety conditions in Bangladesh factories have also improved over the last 10 years. Several large Western companies, NGOs, and international and local unions have joined forces to secure better working conditions in the textile industry with the so-called Accord Arrangement. The arrangement has, among other things, tightened the requirements for fire safety since several clothing factories have been subjected to severe fire accidents, such as the fire in the Tezrin fashion factory in 2012, which caused 112 deaths. The Accord management has done a great deal. Lots of factories have been closed. The Accord arrangement was put into action after the disaster Rana Plaza accident in 2013, where 1,134 workers died. When a textile factory building collapsed following the Rana Plaza incident and subsequently investigation into the safety of the textile industry, 2,000 factories were closed. But even though more and more women are fighting and organizing in unions, there is still a long way to go. Just 3.8% of the workers are members of a union, since many are afraid of being fired if they sign up for one. And when factory owners are further pressured by their employees' claim for better conditions, it could end up with owners moving the production out of the Bangladesh to somewhere else with less working rights. It is like a chain reaction. For consumers in the West, the solution is not to stop buying clothes from Bangladesh. We need to work together to solve this problem, also across the border, says the Bangladesh experts. Macau posted an 82.5% year-on-year rise in gambling revenue to 11.6 billion patakas in $1.4 billion in January, after the world's biggest gambling hub had nearly 500,000 visitors arrive over the week-long Lunar New Year holiday. The crowds were the biggest in more than 3 years, but January's revenue was still less than half of the Lunar New Year period in 2019 prior to COVID-19 outbreak, according to data released by Macau's government on Wednesday. Still, investors took share, sending shares in Macau casinos up between 3% to 5%, while executives and analysts said it was an encouraging sign of a solid recovery to come. A special administrative region of China, Macau, has seen a resurgence of tourists from mainland since January 8. After the territory dropped all COVID-19 testing requirements for inbound travelers from the mainland, Hong Kong and Taiwan. Tens of thousands of tourists streamed daily into Macau's casino and picturesque cobbled street over the Lunar New Year holiday from January 21, a stark contrast to the dearth of visitors into the former Portuguese colony since 2020. Macau is the only place in the country where gambling in casino is legal. It had closely followed China's zero-COVID strategy since 2019 and reopened alongside the mainland. The casino has launched under 20-year contracts in 2022, ranking in billions of dollars and turning a sleep fishing village into a glitzy boomtown. The new contracts, with more government oversight and control, were stuck after COVID-19 restrictions decimated Macau's gambling revenues and sent net debt soaring. The industry had its worst revenue performance on record 2022. The city's once lucrative VIP industry has also collapsed following several arrests in Macau's junket industry. A Macau court on January 18 sentenced Alvin Chow, one of the city's most well-known figures, to 18 years in prison. Casino have committed to investigate a total of 15 billion in the coming decade, 90% of which must spent on developing non-gambling plans that include an indoor water park, health and wellness centers, art exhibitions, and a large garden attraction by sands similar to Singapore's Garden by the Bay. Stakes are high as to whether they can successfully deliver on a government mandate to increase non-gambling revenue to more than 30% versus of the total versus an average of 5% pre-COVID. Chief Executive of Las Vegas said, "We are just thrilled to be open and making money and seeing demand like we are seeing," he told an analyst called last week. The White House expressed outrage on Tuesday at ExxonMobil Corp's record net profit in 2022 of $56 billion, a historical high not just for the company but for the entire Western oil industry. Oil majors are expected to break their own annual records due to high prices and soaring demand, pushing their combined take to near $200 billion. The scale has brought renewed criticism of the oil industry and sparked calls for more countries to levy windfall profit taxes on the companies. A White House statement said Exxon's profit margin was particularly galling as Americans paid record high prices at the pump. It criticized attempts by Republicans in the House of Representatives to push policies aimed at support the oil industry. The latest earning reports make clear that oil companies have everything they need, including record profits and thousands of unused but approved permits to increase production. But they are instead choosing to plow those profits into padding the pockets of executives and shareholders. White House Republicans manufactures excuse after excuse to shield them from any accountability. The White House said President Joe Biden has blasted oil companies and refiners for much of the last year for enjoying surging profits as gasoline prices soared. In January, Biden wrote to executives to major oil refiners and complained they had cut back on production to pad profits, according to a copy of a letter seen by Reuters. Exxon's CFO Catherine Michaels responded to growing criticism over the industry's windfall profits and suggested the answer is not increased taxes. Michaels looked at the EU tax on the energy sector and said, "It is just unlawful and bad policy trying to tax something when what they actually need is for it to increase." Now let's move to the last story. Desai Pat, 23, was on her way to the hospital when she began to go into labor and had no choice but to give birth in the passenger seat as her husband tried to navigate traffic. Desai started having construction on the morning, but she was thinking she had plenty of time. She told her husband to head to the work. He came back around lunchtime and they traveled together to the hospital. Within 10 minutes, the mom of three's waters broke and she began to go into labor in the passenger seat. She had no choice but to give birth by herself while her husband was driving. Now let me explain what she has exactly told. I had no clue it was going to happen until she was already in my pants. She didn't cry, so we were concerned until I felt her move. My husband was yelling and asking if she was okay and asking what he should do. I told him to keep driving and get us to the hospital. I was panicking at first, but I was just wanted to reassure my husband that she was okay and to just keep driving so we could to the hospital as soon as possible. The situation took a turn for the worse when the car came to a standstill due to the heavy traffic. Lawston managed to pull up next to a patrol officer. He told him they had just had a baby and needed an escort to the hospital. The officer quickly turned his lights and on led us through the traffic. We got to the hospital and about 10 to 15 nurses ran out to the car and cut the umbilical cord. They wrapped the baby up in some blankets and took us into a room to check on everything. Luckily, the newborn baby girl, whose name is Diarrhea, was happy and healthy, weighing 5 pounds and 12 ounces. That was the story for the day. Thanks for listening me. I am now available in your thoughts, so let's do subscribe this channel, Jyoti 10 Story, and get the news and refreshing story on the move. For now, good night and stay tuned.